Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session. We are speaking to the amazing Zeenat Ahmed-Peto. She's a cognitive holistic therapist. So thank you so much for joining us. We want to welcome you and thank you for speaking to all our lovely ladies about what you do and how it can help. And we've got a few questions to ask you, if that's okay.
Of course, I'd love to.
Amazing. So, to start off with, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into hypnotherapy?
Absolutely. So I used to be a primary school teacher and I really, really loved that job. I had some challenges like most people during their lives at different times. I had some health issues, some relationship issues. I had bereavement in my teens, unfortunately. So I sought counselling and therapy for myself. And I found that it really helped me to manage those situations and sort of learn about my own resilience, which I didn't realise I had. So after I've been working in schools full time for about 10 years and in education generally for about 15 years, I decided to retrain as a hypnotherapist so I could help other people.
Amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've just got a question because a lot of the general public, when they talk about hypnotherapy, they often think of the Paul McKenna type hypnotherapy that's on the TV shows. There's a lot of that, certainly in the 1990s. Can you tell us exactly what it is?
Absolutely. Funny enough, you mentioned Paul McKenna. I went to see him in London a long time ago, and it was actually pretty amazing what he was doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, what he's doing is more designed for stage and entertainment. But within that, he was actually helping people to see that they could make important changes.
Yeah.
And I went to see him at that show and I felt inspired when I left and I wanted to learn more. And then I went off into my training and stuff. So what I do is actually very different because it's one-to-one and it's based in a therapeutic context. So what I mean by that, it's the relationship between the therapist and the client, which is of vital importance. And it's a relationship of trust, and obviously no one else is watching. So you're not doing it in front of anyone. And it's basically a relationship where you support, I would support the client with whatever it is they want to change.
Oh, that's amazing. I saw him as well. And I remember it was in London. It was probably around a similar sort of time, just fascinated in what he did and how it was possible, really. It was incredible. So for you, Zeenat, what areas of hypnotherapy do you work in? Are there areas of hypnotherapy?
Yeah, I pretty much work with all areas, if you like, because what I would say is each person's an individual. So what I'm listening for is what is it that they would like help with? What do they want to change? What's not working for them right now? And often I find that people who go and see a hypnotherapist, they've tried lots of other things first and they sort of come to us last, if you like. But I would say my special areas of interest are anxiety, which is massive. It's kind of very pervasive in all areas of society. Stress, relationships with others, and very importantly, relationships with ourselves. I'm really interested in self-love and resilience and actually building the love from the inside out. Confidence, trauma, PTSD. I also work with primary age children. I'm an experienced teacher, and all issues around fertility, IVF, hypnobirthing, perimenopause, menopause, and all sort of women's issues, if you like.
Wow, that's a very broad spectrum, which is amazing.
It's really broad,
Yeah, but really interesting for you and diverse, which is obviously quite nice for you as a practitioner as well.
I like the variety.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have an ideal client? Do you have one particular area that you love working with?
It's a question I get asked all the time, and what I would say is I work with men and women, and I work with children over the age of about 7, depending on their level of understanding. But what I'm actually looking for and listening out for is the mindset of the person I'm speaking to. So rather than working with certain groups of people, I'm sort of looking for a type of person, if you know what I mean. So I enjoy working with people who are open-minded, they're ready for change. So they know they're not happy with the situation, but they're willing and able to do the work that it takes to make those changes. So a lot of changes happen under the level of consciousness, but it also takes time, effort, and money, and not to mention the will and determination when it does get tough sometimes. And that's what I'm really listening for in a potential client, to see if we're a good match.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
it's always the hard work though, isn't it? They've got to put some work in. There's no magic solution, is there?
I'm not a magician, unfortunately.
No, not at all. So you did mention some things just then, but do you tend to work with women who have problems that have arisen from like hormonal issues, like they're women that will be on our program?
Definitely. I mean, what I would say is, if you're someone who's open and willing to sort of explore and trust the process and have those open conversations, then most definitely. Because I just think that when you're more in touch with your emotions and you're more able to verbalize what's going on, it can just make it easier to deal with any sort of health or hormonal issue. And I guess the people that you're working with are already those types of people, which is ideal. And I would say that hypnotherapy can be used safely in conjunction with any other kinds of treatments and supplements that you might be having, like acupuncture, or working in a program where you're working on your nutrition or your exercise, or any of those things that you can do to help yourself to balance your hormones.
Amazing. Can you give us an example of the kind of results that you see through hypnotherapy? You know, it can be a particular client that you give us a kind of idea of.
Yeah. Well, I would say on a general level, rather than a specific person, I would say most people say they feel better even after the first session, because I do a really detailed history take, and I think people just feel lighter once they've explained it all in one go to one person. Yeah. They've often spoken to their friends, but they don't want to burden their friends. They don't want to go on too long. But when they're talking to someone like me, that's why I'm here. So they often also comment on the recordings that I make for them. Each one is bespoke. Each client has their own ideal outcome, and that's what the recording's based on. So I'm relaying the words back to them that they want to see in their lives, the changes they want to see, couched in hypnotic language, which makes it easier for the unconscious mind to pick up. So very, very quickly, they start to feel lighter, more positive. They feel they're doing something useful, and they start to say, that thing I was telling you, I don't really feel that anymore. It's just, it was a 9 out of 10, and now it's more like a 4, and then we work on getting that down further. And sometimes other things emerge within the session. So they see changes quite rapidly. And it's known as quite a brief therapy. So we don't, just carry on week after week for months and years. Obviously it depends on the client and their problem, but they do tend to see results very quickly, and they're lasting. That's the thing that's amazing.
Oh, I love that.
I like the fact that you talked about feeling lighter. I think that's a really powerful thing for people to feel. It's just like you said, the burden has been lifted of whatever their symptom or issue or anxiety or stress was. So that's amazing.
Zeenat, I'm actually quite interested in, do you think you could tell us, like, what would a session look like? I mean, like I said, we refer to Paul McKenna, but coming to see you as an individual client, how would that look?
Yeah, so basically a session would be either we would meet on Zoom or in person, depending on what we've agreed to do. And it's usually about an hour. Sometimes I say leave a few extra minutes afterwards. Most of the session is eyes open, conversational. There are times when I would ask people, once we've kind of built up that rapport, probably halfway through the session or into the second session, I might ask them to close their eyes, and I might ask them to recall something. We do something called timeline therapy. And, we put lots of safety things in place, which are basically, if you don't feel comfortable, you open your eyes and you're just talking to me. There's no such thing as a sort of deep hypnosis. It's a very light hypnosis. So you're aware of the sounds outside the room, if there's a car going past, or if you could hear, I don't know, somebody talking, or they're just kind of outside in the background. It's a very light hypnosis, but you are able to tap in to that memory or that feeling or whatever it is we're trying to work with. And I'll guide you through the process. So I'm watching you the whole time. We also, if we're working on Zoom, I will set up something so I can ring you on your phone if my internet fails, or if yours fails. We have another way of contacting each other by video call on our phones, for example. And, you know, much of it is conversational. And at some parts of certain sessions, I will make a recording. So I'd usually make the recording in the session, so you hear it once in front of me, record it on my phone and send it directly to you, and ask you to listen to it every night, and just as you're going to bed. So that's kind of how a session would go, but it depends which stage of the process we're at, really.
And how long would they listen to that recording for? So you're saying you're listening to it every night, so it's to put them into sort of like a meditative state, is it? Just
Yes, yeah, it is a meditative state. I can never say that word.
Okay.
And but it's also got the kind of hypnotic language embedded in it. So you'll start, and I'll say things like, you know, you will start to notice the changes, you know, slowly, and you might not even remember, you know, something that happened before, and blah blah blah. So I'll be sort of saying that kind of language, and I would say the recordings are about 10 minutes long. For some people, listening to it for 2 weeks is enough. It does the job. For some people, because it's almost like a master recording, it's got everything in it that they're trying to achieve, they might listen to that through the program, and they might have a shorter recording done for them, which might just be a specific little thing, and they might listen to that for a week and say, okay, that's done its job. So at some point they'll become obsolete. For some people who have gone away, you know, 6 months later, they might say, oh, can I have a call with you, because I'm feeling a little bit like that again. We have a quick conversation. I say, do you still have a recording? If they don't, I send it to them, and they listen to it again. And they usually report after 2 or 3 listens, oh yeah, I'm fine now. You know, so it's like the unconscious mind remembers. The other thing I would say about the recording is they become very used to my voice. Because if I see you on Monday and then you listen to me every night, and then I see you again on Monday, you've already listened to me 6 nights, you know, so they've become very familiar.
Can I ask, does everyone remember the sessions? Because I think one of the other things that we often think about with hypnosis is that you don't remember when you come out of it. And this goes back to the Paul McKenna kind of ideas of like people doing funny stuff on stage. And then they're like, what do you mean I was jumping up and down doing star jumps? Do your clients remember all the conversations and what you've gone through in the process?
Yeah, they do. So I would just answer the Paul McKenna thing first. I'll just say, when you watch those kind of shows, which you can find on YouTube and things, the people who would have danced like a chicken probably would have done it anyway. So, you know, they'd be like, oh, pick me. And that's who those stage hypnotists are looking for.
Yes.
They're looking for the people who want to come up on stage and make a laugh and, you know, have fun, sort of thing. So no, it's completely different to that, obviously. So you will record all of the sessions. So the majority of the sessions, us talking with our eyes open. I ask different kinds of questions, tap into their emotions or memories, or in some cases it's very cognitive, and I'm asking, you know, what do you think about this now? So it's quite logical. So there's 2 parts. There's the cognitive eyes open logical part, and there's the unconscious part where we use the hypnosis, but most of that is actually in the recordings. So you might have some hypnosis in a session, but that will be recorded and you'll go home and listen to it again. You will remember everything, basically.
Incredibly powerful. And can you just explain the difference between, because we've mentioned it, meditation and hypnosis? Because obviously, you know, you've mentioned both, and how do they really differ?
You know, that's a very good question. I think you'd have to ask someone who knows more about the sort of brain waves. I don't want to say that I can remember exactly whether they're the alpha or the beta waves, but there's something to do with the brain waves, how they slow down. What I would say with the hypnosis is that if I was doing a meditation with you, I would be, you know, helping you to focus on your breathing and really noticing different parts of your body, and perhaps, you know, relaxing each part of your body one at a time, for example. That's just one example. And I might take you on a walk, a visualization somewhere, into a beautiful forest, go for a walk, something like that. With the hypnosis, it's all of that, but I'm also embedding the things that you want more of. So you might say, when I walk into that meeting, I want to feel comfortable in my body. I want to feel, lighter on my feet, or my words are coming to me easily. I'm able to make eye contact and smile at the people who are listening. So let's say that's what you said you wanted in a meeting that was coming up. Then those are the things I would be sort of saying to you in the middle of the meditation, if you like.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because obviously from everything you've been telling us, I can see how this, or maybe you can explain as well, how this would really help, like the women that Sam and I work with, sort of a lot of them have this hormonal imbalance, or they're in the perimenopause, and a lot of them suffer with anxiety. Now that is to do with hormonal changes, but there's also a lot going on in their lives. A lot of them have got to deal with work and, kids, and, so it just, their stress resilience is really low.
Yeah.
Or, they've got grief, they've lost a parent, or they're struggling with aging, or maybe their kids have left home, and that's all just a different type of grief, isn't it? So I can see from what you're saying, actually putting it back to who we work with, sometimes there's only so much that we can do, because there's trauma in there as well, from from things that might have happened to them in their 20s, or when they were younger. So it sounds like it's the sort of thing that you might work with.
Absolutely.
And that will help them, as as like all these complementary therapies are called complementary for a reason.
Absolutely. And as you were just talking, then I just thought of a client. I thought I'd just give you a little synopsis of what happened with her. So this lady came to me a couple of years ago, before the pandemic. Actually, it must have been a bit before that. And the main symptom she was suffering with was not being able to sleep at night. And her husband had moved into the other room because she was tossing and turning, which was disturbing him, because he was working, and that was making him quite cranky. And she sort of came for that. So she booked a number of sessions, and we started working on it. And after like the first session, she said, "Oh, it's already a bit better." So I made a recording for her, which kind of made her fall asleep. And every time she woke up in the night, she could listen to it again. So that was helping on that level. She then started to say she was having some issues with her older son, because actually she felt she hadn't really bonded fully with him when he was born, because she'd had a very traumatic birth. And she never really got to explain that to anyone, because at the time, I think her family were just so relieved that her and the baby were fine. She never got to actually say what she went through. And then she was, a new mum. She didn't really know what she was doing. And this baby wasn't the easiest baby, and struggled with colic and things like that. So the bonding process was difficult. She then thinks she might have had postnatal depression. She had a second child who was a kind of easy birth, easy kind of bonding, and consequently she felt she was more connected with the younger son, but she felt guilty about this. So we worked on that. Then she booked 6 sessions. On the 5th session, as she was leaving, she said, "There's something massive that I've never told anyone, but it's nagging me, and I feel I need to tell you." And I said, "Okay, please sit down." She was about to leave. I said, "Okay, come in and sit down." And she said, "I was abused between the age of 7 and 14 by a family member."
Oh my God.
And she'd never told anyone. She thinks her sister was also abused, but she'd never discussed it with her. And this was in another country. She used to go to that country every year for a holiday, family holiday. And it was the first time she was going back after several years, and she was going to see that person, who's now an elderly man. And she didn't want to tell her parents because they would be devastated. But she also felt guilty about the other young girls who were her cousins at the time. And she felt she needed to bring this out in the open. So there was, it started with, "I can't sleep very well. I'm not really very sure if I'm being stretched in my work. And, my relationship with my older son's a bit difficult, and his behavior is a bit challenging." And then actually, once we sort of worked through those things, and they were all starting to fall into place, this was then the bulk of our work. And it took that long, that many hours of us talking to each other, for her to feel that she could bring that up.
Yeah.
she then booked a few more sessions and we worked primarily on that. And, that was an amazing example of, often people come with symptoms, but the symptoms aren't really the problem. So I'm listening to your symptoms, but I'm really listening to what's underneath that, what's driving that behavior or that way of thinking or that, symptom or that physical symptom. It's not always something that you just say. It's often in your body, and anxiety comes with a whole bunch of physical symptoms. That's how we know we're anxious.
Definitely we see that, don't we?
So it's great that she built up the trust with you, and actually unearthed what actually some deep issues were, because Hannah and I definitely see that in clinic ourselves. When people present and say, this is what I'm coming to see you for, these are my symptoms, but actually when we take a deep dive into them, we're actually saying, well, actually we need to prioritize this. You've come to us and we will deal with them, but actually the overarching area that we need to concentrate on is something different that you've come to us with. And like you, it might sometimes take a couple of sessions actually for something to be announced, because they build that trust up. And like you said, it's a huge relief for people to tell someone, because often they've left it kind of within for so many years. So that's hugely powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you gave me goosebumps when you were saying that.
Yeah,
I was like, that's
an amazing woman. Really
amazing.
I've got an extra question. Do you do, because we do have, often with what Hannah and I do, we do have people that suffer from some of the similar, symptoms. Say anxiety is quite a big one for people, not just for their hormones, but over the last few years, we've all felt a sense of anxiety coming up because of COVID and, lots of the world problems that we've got. Do you do group sessions for kind of a generalized symptom like anxiety, or do you only see individuals?
I do group sessions, and normally what I would do is sort of design a program based on what people are asking for. But then obviously you kind of think of the program, you think, oh, this is what lots of my clients are asking for, and then you don't always get those same people because they're already working with you individually. But certainly I can teach lots of different calming techniques, lots of different methods that you can use to empty your mind, whether it's journaling or whether it's listening to different kinds of meditation or doing different kinds of exercise. A lot of it is also mindset based. If you reframe the sentences that are popping into your head or the words that are coming out of your mouth, when we say thoughts become things, all we're really saying is that you think of something and then you say it, and then if you imagine it and you start to believe it, and then you make it happen, you make it reality. So that's why the mindset is just so important. So a lot of the work I do, it can be quite practical, but a lot of it is exercises for you to do, how you speak to yourself. If you think about, your best friend, if she was having a hard time, what would you say to her? But is that the same voice you're using to yourself, or are you being critical and telling yourself off, or are you being kind to yourself? All of those sorts of things. So certainly I do run group programs, and brilliant. if there's a kind of demand for a specific thing, then I can design a program to go with that.
Oh, that's
brilliant. Thank you.
They sound really good. Do you just work online? Do you see people in person? Where can people
find you? Yeah, I do both. I would say the majority of my work is online. I do have some sessions every week set aside for people who want to see me face to face, but they're few and far between because they tend to get booked up. I see all of my children in person. So unless they specifically, I have had a few children who live in another country or that for some reason we can't get together. Otherwise, I will always work with them in person, usually on a Saturday morning because of all the clubs and and all of that.
Yeah, you can't get hold of children. They're busier than us.
Yeah, they are. I've got a really, really busy list of activities. So yeah, mostly online, but I do have a few slots in person if people really want it.
Okay, we'll put all your details on our post, but where can we find you on Instagram? What's your name?
I'm Zeenat Hypnotherapy, and on Facebook I'm Zeenat Ahmed-Peto Cognitive Hypnotherapy, and my website is zeenatahmedpeto.com. So there's only one of me, so if you put in any kind of combination of Zeenat, Ahmed and Peto, you will find me.
That's so interesting.
Hundreds, but Zeenat Ahmed Peto is unique.
Thank you so much. That's really really interesting, and I think what you do is incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
it really and it certainly complements what we do, so that's brilliant.
Definitely. Thank you so much for giving us your time to talk to us today, and I think all our group members will really appreciate it as well. Okay, thank you.